My hat! These are all Team Powers Actinium V3 motors. Now there is a V4 version, I just don't have any to compare the previous version with the new version. Really the goal is just to compare the same type of motor, same family of motors, and just compare the KVs. Now, not all motors are the same, and not all motors in the same brand, series, or model are the same. So you could have a similar motor, another Team Powers Actinium V3 7.5 turn motor, and you could get slightly different results. If you do, hopefully for the better. But here what I have is the average degrees according to my SkyRC Brushless Motor Analyzer, BMA-01. That's the model that I have. And here in the end bell, just a quick little note. Here for 8, the end bell read 5. Here it read 30, 35, 40, 52. So keep that in mind. So if your motor were to be exactly identical to mine, if you moved it to the 42 mark, you would actually be at a higher degree versus a 40 mark. But in order for you to achieve 42, you may be at, I don't know, 38, 39, 40, 42, whichever mark. It's going to depend, but this will give you a rough idea. So 7.5 motor, what I have here, this is the average degree of timing, and this is phase A, phase B, phase C. So yeah, pretty close, pretty close. And we have here the KV. Now the KV is the revolutions per volt, and this is the voltage. For most of these, the battery that was used was a Team Powers 5500 milliamp hour battery. Only for these 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, did I use a newer Team Powers 4200 battery. The 5500 battery, that one's about 3 years old. And I'm going to talk about that later on once I get to this part. But generally, if you take the kilovolts and you multiply by the voltage, you will get the RPM. Now, if you were to actually multiply these two numbers, you would actually get 30,500 and change. It's very close. It's close enough. One of the things that you cannot do is, if you know the KVs, do not just assume that your battery is a 7.4. You may be pulling, you may have a voltage of 7.4, you may have a voltage that's slightly higher, you may have a voltage that's slightly lower. So just multiplying KV by whatever you think your battery isn't going to give you the most accurate information. So for example, if you have a Traxxas Pinion 3300 RPM motor and you have a Traxxas 7.4 battery, not all batteries are going to have the same voltage reading. So you cannot just take 7.4 and multiply by your KV and assume that's your RPM. The other thing you cannot assume is that once you know the RPM, for example, this is what I read, that I can now take my final drive ratio, take my circumference of my tires, and calculate my speed. And the reason why is your RPM will sag quite a bit once it's under load. All of these readings are with no load. That's something else that's important. For example, your amp draw as well. Once you apply a load, your amps will change. You will start pulling more amps. But based on the table, what we have here, this is what we have. So 8 degrees yields 4,000 RPMs, just over. RPMs per volt, so KV. Your RPMs are going to be just under 31,000 RPMs, and it's going to draw 2.1 amps, which means that you're going to have a very, very long runtime. So if you're just using this motor to have just a good amount of speed and have fabulous runtime, this timing is probably the timing where you want to be. I mean, something like this could probably run 40 minutes, no problem. It really depends on how you drive, to be honest. So don't quote me on 40 minutes. Next thing you know, one of you's going to try and say, hey, I only got 30. Another one's going to try, I got an hour. That is possible. You could get an hour, you could get 30 minutes. So it really depends. But based on this, this is 2.1 amps that are drawn. Now, if I just go up to 32, now again, NBell read 30, 32 degrees, again, these are pretty close. And this is important. You want these numbers to be close. You will see later why with a different motor. These are your KVs, and this is the voltage. Now, there was a slight sag in voltage. We have the RPMs, 34,000 RPMs, just above. So one of the things that we notice is we have a percent difference increase. So we have an increase of 11.6%. Let's call it 12%. But your consumption, your amperage, it draws now 124% more. So your amperage more than doubled. So this is the additional. So now you're consuming more than double the amperage, but you're only getting about 12% of the speed. So that's something that you want to keep in mind. It's not just about speed, it's the purpose of the vehicle. What are you going to be using the vehicle for? Are you going to be using it just for bashing? It probably won't matter. This extra 12% will not matter. And the reason why is 12%, let's use 10 to make it easy. If your vehicle runs, say, 50 miles per hour, and you take 10% of that, that's 5 miles. Are you going to notice the difference when you're bashing? Probably not. I mean, maybe you're that good at judging speed that you will, but more than likely you're not going to unless you're running alongside another vehicle, which most of the time you're not going to notice. So keep that in mind. Is it worth it? Is it not? But if you're racing, it is certainly worth it. And that's something to keep in mind. But then if you're racing, all right, this is worth it. You think, great. What if I bump it up a little more? Let's go to 37, so 5 degrees. All right, this stays pretty close. Larger variant now, but still close enough. All right, now our KVs went up to 4,851, 7.4 volts, so the battery sustained the same voltage. 35,904 RPMs, so almost 36,000 RPMs. That looks like a great number. 5.4 amps. All right, you're drawing more amperage, but still, maybe your battery can handle it, and that's great. And that's something important. Your battery has to be able to handle this, or else you're going to damage batteries. Now, this is a 4.5 increase over the previous one. So it's just over the previous one. Your amperage consumption is about 15% more over the other one, so not a big deal. So you're thinking, all right, well, everything looks good. What if I increase it just a little more? Let's go 5 degrees more. Here we have 42. All right, these are pretty close. All right, we're still good. KVs, all right. It's almost 100 KVs more. Does that give us much more speed? Well, about 600, closer to 700 revolutions per minute more. Will you notice that? No, you're probably not. So if you're bashing, it doesn't matter. If you're racing, it will matter. But one of the things to note here is, notice now you're over 6 amps, just over 6 amps. You will probably need a fan at this point. If you're bashing, you're better off staying over here because your motor's going to run cooler. The more amperage you draw, amperage is heat. I mean, it's not heat. Amperage is current, but the more current, the more heat. So your motor is going to start getting hotter, and if you're bashing, your temperatures are going to rise. So at this point, you're probably going to be needing a fan. Even if you're racing, depending on where you're racing and the ambient temperature, you may not need a fan if you're running here. You may want to consider a fan here you will want a fan over here, unless it's freezing cold for some reason. But let's see, what if we go 10 degrees? We'll just jump 10 degrees, which is what I decided to do just for fun. And the reason why I decided to just jump 10 degrees is because, well, I had already hit the 6 amp mark, which is what I was looking for. I was actually looking for a 6 or something close to a 6, just below or just over 6.4. So that's what this means here. If you're wondering what the green is, it means for my personal use, I'm probably going to pick something in between here, these two. That's ideal. I can run a fan. My motor's probably going to be running at 130 degrees. I don't want to go over 150. So if I run 140, that's fine. And I'm going to talk about another motor later on. Now, if I jump over to 52 degrees on this particular motor, I'm going to be drawing 11 amps. This motor is going to get hot. If you're bashing, even with a fan, it will get hot. You run the risk of damaging your motor and reaching really unsafe temperatures. So keep that in mind. You don't just want to turn the timing up. Also, if you look at the RPM difference, it's only about 2,000 RPMs more. If you're bashing, you're not really going to notice the difference when you reach such high RPMs. The difference between, say, 36,000 and 38,000 is not that much once you get here. You're looking at about a 6% difference. Well, I mean, here's the percentage difference, 5.6. And your amperage consumption just went up 72% more. So it's really inefficient. Your runtime is going to be very low compared to any of these, and you risk damaging your motor. And this isn't even considering pinion gears. I mean, you could always say, well, maybe I'll just run a lot smaller pinion gear. Well, you just kind of defeated the purpose of having really high RPMs. So at this point, it's not really worth it because you would have to gear down your pinion. Your pinion would have to be so small that you would defeat the purpose. So for bashing, you probably want to stay on the lower side. Racing, you probably want to stay right here. And again, it depends on the type of track, if it's on-road, off-road, what it is that you're doing, the weight of the vehicle. All of this is going to determine. If you're running maybe on-road super light, maybe you can get away with this. Try it at your own risk. I'm not promoting it, but this is just to give you an idea on how to select the timing. Let's say you're running a 13.5 motor. Again, same family, Team Powers Actinium V3. Now this is a motor that I ran in my EB4 10.2 buggy for quite some time. As of this video, I've actually switched it to a 7.5, and the reason why is this 13.5. I'm actually going to put in my short course. That's the reason why. But let's see, that aside, so if we look at the average degrees, so we have 33, 40, and it's the same thing. This was 30 in the MBell, 40, 45, and this was 50, but I tried turning it down to see if I could get 50, and I got pretty close. So this is just below the 50 mark. I don't know, it would be 49, whatever it was, just estimate. But here we go. So let's just say the lower degrees now here, 33, because there's no point in running less timing on this motor. The higher the turns, there's no point in running low timing on these motors, on these Team Powers motors, and probably any other motor for that matter. So you're probably going to be running them with at least 30 degrees of timing. Anything that's higher turns. And by higher turns, I'm saying 13.5 and up. So if we look at the degrees here, we have a bit of an issue. There's 5 degrees difference between this phase, and that does affect motors. So if you have a motor where these are closer, it's going to perform better. Versus these, but at least it's consistent. 5, 5, 5. Over here, it completely switched over. Now it's 52, 52, 57. So this one's now higher, which I could not figure out why. But over here, again, there's a difference. So the closer your timing is per phase, the better. But this is what I have. This is what I got. But here we go. So we have KVs. KV, so we have 3,782. One thing to notice, if we go down to the KVs, notice this is a 13.5, this is a 7.5. You can change the timing and make it very close to another motor. So I'll give you an example. 7.5 with 8 degrees of timing, 4,000, what, close enough. 13.5 with 47 to 50 degrees, 4,000, close enough, 4,100. This one's right in the middle. So you do not actually need a 7.5. You can actually just get a 13.5 and turn up the timing. So let's just look at this and then I'll make another comparison with that over there. And this is important when choosing the turns of the motor. You have to keep in mind the purpose. What are you going to be using the motor for? And here, one of the things that we have, if you look at this here, so 2.9 amps. All right, that's not bad. Long runtime. Here we have 4.1, 4.8. Okay, that's good. You're still good. You probably will not need a fan if this is in a buggy. More than likely you will not, but I'm not going to say you won't, just in case you're really hot climate or something. But one of the things that I want you to note is 4.1, 4.7, and keep in mind, this is with the same battery. So if we look at the 4.1, you're going to get better runtime. So that means that you can run maybe a lighter pack, battery pack, such as that 14200, and not worry about it because you're not going to be consuming that much current and you will still need the runtime that you need to finish off that race without killing your battery, or you'll get an extra, 5 minutes of runtime when you're out bashing. Probably won't notice it, but notice again that your RPMs at 34,000. Actually, your RPMs did drop. What was I comparing it to? Let's see, KVs. Where was I? Oh, here we go. We're looking at this one. 4,000, right? So 30,000, 31, almost 31. If you look at this over here, 30,000, close to 30,000. These here, you have similar KVs to this, but then the question is, which one do you want? Do you want this one or do you want this one? You have double the consumption of amperage, but then keep in mind that this one, you will probably have to gear lower. The question is how much lower? If you are gearing this one, let's just say this one, you have to use an 18 pinion, and this one you have to use a 22 pinion. And they work about the same. This motor will probably be the faster one, even with the lower timing. So you have lower timing, you have less amperage, and you're going to have slightly higher speeds. So again, it all depends on the purpose of the vehicle. If you're doing a particular race class, then that's not going to matter because unless it's open, you're probably going to have to pick a particular motor. But that's something to keep in mind. Now, back to this motor. So timing, if we go up 10 degrees, we're at 4 amps, right? RPM, not much difference, to be honest. But there's quite a large difference between consumption, right? You're going from 3 to 4. Now, over here, again, not much difference in RPM, but consumption, there is a significant difference. So you're only gaining, say, 7%, but you're consuming about 17% more. So still, now I'll be honest, I would probably pick this one. And the one I would pick would actually be this one, the 5.4. So that one gives you 30,000 RPMs. Although I don't like the timing here, but that's what the motor has. And then your other option would be the 6.6, which, to be honest, isn't bad. Just run a fan. The more current, the more heat. So just run a fan. So maybe I should mark this green and consider this. I'll be honest, this is what I was running in my buggy. So this is an EB410.2. The buggy with battery, everything weighed about 1,717 grams, which is heavy, pretty heavy. It's 80 to 100 grams. I don't remember what the weight class is. But anyway, to be honest, four-wheel drive buggies at the track that I was in runs open, so it doesn't matter. There's no weight or any restrictions on motors. But anyway, that's why I decided to switch over to the 7.5. I still need to run that. But it ran fine. It does have a motor, a fan for the motor, and it was generally between 130 and 140 degrees. Temperature inside of the building was about 80 degrees. So this is Fahrenheit that I'm using. So that's fine. And the reason why is if the inside temperature in the building goes up, then I have some leeway there so that I do not exceed 150 degrees. If it gets cooler, then I can bump it up. So that's something else. I can also choose between going from here to here, although this is not much difference if you really think about it. But I can't increase the timing if it's a cooler day, for example. And it's indoor carpet, so we will see. Now, if we go to the 21.5, now 21.5, this was an interesting motor to test, and I was pulling my hair out for a variety of reasons, and you will see. But I was testing this because this is a motor I originally purchased to run USGT, which I ran once, and that was it. But that's a different story. It's neither here nor there. Let's see, Team Powers Actinium V3, so 32 degrees. Again, the end bell says 30, 40, 45, 50. I was going for 52, and this one here, I can't remember, to be honest. But here I actually used a different battery, and except for this run. So this run is that 5500 milliamp battery. This one, and these three were with the 42. So one of the things that I saw is, it appears that the battery makes a difference. Well, I mean, we all know battery makes a difference, but this is a battery that I purchased, like I said, maybe 4 months ago. This is a battery that I've had for maybe 3 years. And that 0.1 may not seem like much, but when you look at the KV, and then you look at these numbers, that 0.1 makes a difference. This one has slightly lower KV, but that 0.1 gave me more speed. See, I actually lost 1% RPM compared to the previous. And this comes probably from the battery. Now this one here I left because I had tested and I figured I'd show it and I'd talk about the batteries, so that's something to keep in mind. Quality batteries or newer batteries can make a difference. If you're bashing, it's not going to matter. So if you're bashing, just keep your old batteries until they die. If you're racing, you may want to consider updating your batteries. Maybe recycle the other ones, give them away, I don't know, take your pick. Now, keep in mind that my charger, I generally do not exceed 10 amps because I probably bash more than I race, to be honest. Actually, no, I do bash more than I race by a long shot, not even close. So exceeding 10 amps doesn't matter, but keep in mind that for those people that do have the equipment to discharge and charge at 30, 40 amps, their batteries probably would never last 3 years. They probably have fresh batteries quite often. So that's something to keep in mind. But for the average, chances are if you're watching this video, you're probably interested in getting into the hobby and you're thinking of what motor and what timing. Keep in mind, battery will affect it. So now let's look at the actual numbers. So RPMs, we have them all here. Again, amps, we're looking at something between close to 6, and to be honest, both of these would be fine. The reason why I probably, let's see, why did I select that one instead of this one? I cannot remember. I'm not sure why, to be honest. So either one of these would work. So that's something to keep in mind. So go for 53 or 54 degrees. 54 degrees will give you speed. You're within 6. If you have a fan on the motor, you will be fine. Nothing will happen. But you're looking at about 23,300 RPMs, 22,700. So somewhere around there, ballpark, say at 22 to 23,000 RPMs if you're running a 21.5 motor of this class at 53 to 54 degrees. And that being said, if we move on to this one, and this motor, this is the one I have in my VTA car. And this is why I am interested, or I'm interested in testing the motors and just see, because timing makes a big difference. You want enough timing to have the speed, but not enough to where you overheat the motor and destroy the magnets. So when I tried this out, my runtime was incredibly long. I tried it like this. I had it race. Keep in mind, it's 8 minutes. And my voltage per cell went from 4.2 down to 4.05, keeping this. Right now, I think I'm running this here, 5.7. Let me see the degrees. No, actually, I bumped it up. I'm running this here. No, I'm running this. No, I ran this. This is what I ran. Sorry, 51. And 51, my voltage used to be, like I said, once I removed the battery, it was 4.05. Once I bumped it up, it was reading 3.95. So I will be going with greater timing and trying it out. Now, the only thing here, I put this in this different color. It was sort of like a consider this for me, because if that's a lot of power I still have in my battery, so I can bump up the timing. And this is now again, the track where we're running VTA batteries, you can run the 6600 amp batteries. Those are the batteries that the shop will sell you for VTA. The rules generally say 6,000 milliamp hour batteries, but the shop will sell you the 66 milliamp hour batteries just because they're heavier. It's easier to make weight. That's the reason why. So, right, if you go to different tracks, they may have slightly different rules. Some tracks would not accept those batteries, so I would have to get new batteries. So that's the battery that I am running. So even if I went down to a 6,000 milliamp battery, I would still be fine. I wouldn't run the risk of running out of battery power. And once in a while, you will see that some guys, their batteries will just give out mid-race. But then again, they've probably used them a lot, and they've, again, charged and discharged and charged at really high amperage, which will damage them over time. Voids every aspect of your warranty. Not that the warranty matters. I mean, it's when you're competing, you pretty much buy the stuff and you know you're going to eventually replace it with something newer or better. So it's not a big deal, I guess, from that perspective. But here, what we have, a 25.5 motor, turn motor, degrees, we have 44, 51, 52, 53. And to get this 51 and 52, I mean, that was so close to the 50. It was difficult. The 55, this was actually, I think this was closer to 60. I kind of wish I remembered where it was in the end bell. But that's something to keep in mind. So the end bell reads a little different than the actual. This one, I believe, may have been 45. And this was a little higher. This one, I believe, was 55, and this one was closer to 60. But here we go. So one of the things that I do not like about this particular motor is the difference here in the phases. I mean, there's a major difference between C and the other two. If we look at this here, if you 52, 55, all right, that's 3, but then going from 49 to 55, that's 6 degrees difference. Over here, I mean, 6 degrees, 5 degrees, 6 degrees. It just seems like a lot, especially when over here, well, not that one. This motor over here seemed to be more consistent. That's the reason why. But anyway, moving on. The important part here, we have the KVs based on this, and there was actually quite a jump. I mean, if you look at this, there's about a 10-degree difference, all right, 11, 12, I guess, if you take the peaks. But if you look at the RPM, see, this is a motor like this, a low turn motor, this is where it makes the largest difference, right here. So if you go from here to here, you're looking at almost 400 RPM difference. Now over here, it starts to be very similar, but then over here, 55. I mean, this was a huge difference. So this is sort of the part where you may want to consider running your motor, because there's such a big difference in RPMs. I mean, 2,300 RPMs, only almost 2,400 RPMs. But let's see, voltage does sag. As you can see, there's a sag in voltage. And your amp draw is now 9. So it's quite a bit of heat. Even when you place it on the analyzer runs it for a short period of time. Well, I mean, I'm controlling the dial. It's a short period of time. I can feel the motor getting significantly warm compared to these. Over here, it doesn't even phase the motor, to be honest. So you're looking at a 45% increase in amp draw from here, but there is say a 13% increase in RPM. So that's something to keep in mind. If your battery has enough capacity to keep you running an entire 8 minutes, well, our VTAs are 8 minutes. If you're running 5 minutes, then you're gonna have plenty of juice. And you can have a fan that keeps your motor cool so that you don't exceed that 150. Just run this. So what if it's 9 amps? This is fast. This is a big difference here. Now here you're thinking, wait, you just said up here 2,000 RPMs isn't much. Yeah, that's 2,000 RPMs over here. This is down here. 2,000 RPMs here is more than 4,000 RPMs up here if you take the ratio. I mean, this is 36 to 38. This is 15 to 17. You double the 15, you're at 30. You haven't even hit the 36. So 2,000 RPMs here is over 4,000 RPM difference here. So here on this motor, I would consider, if it's a cool day, like I said, if you can keep the motor cool, I would just run 55 timing, call it good. Now, like I said, the M-Bell, it's almost 60. It read almost 60 for my particular motor. But anyway, I hope my data here, hopefully you paused the video at some point and then just looked at the numbers on your own. But I hope this data kind of helps you out and gives you an idea. Again, this is only for these 4 motors that I own. Every manufacturer is going to be different for the turns. Again, once you apply a load, there's no guarantee that the motor will keep that RPM. I mean, if you think of combustion engines, you can have a similar displacement, but the bore versus the stroke will make a difference in torque and horsepower. So with electric motors, again, it changes manufacturer. The thickness of the wire that is used makes a difference. The material that's used for the magnets makes a difference. But if you are new or considering purchasing one of these motors, please look at my table on the data. Just pause the video and see what you think would be a good starting point for you. Other than that, thank you very much for watching.